Hi, I'm Alex. I'm the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, but that day, my own sister banned me from her wedding because I was too poor. I know what you're thinking. How can a CEO be poor? Well, stick around because what happened next will blow your mind. And I want to ask you something right now. What would you do if your own family judged you based on money alone? It started 3 weeks ago when I got an email. Not a call, not a text, an email. The subject line read, Sarah's wedding, save the date. I opened it, expecting the usual excitement you'd feel for your little sister's big day. Instead, what I found was a cold, formal invitation that looked like it cost more than most people's rent. The invitation was printed on thick, cream-colored cardstock with gold embossing. Everything about it screamed expensive. The venue was listed as the Grand Ballroom at the Ritz-Carlton downtown, easily a $50,000 location. As I held that invitation in my hands, sitting in my small one-bedroom apartment, I felt this weird mix of pride and something else I couldn't quite name yet. I picked up my phone and called Sarah immediately. Hey, sis, congratulations. I just got your invitation. Michael seems like a great guy, and I'm so excited for you. There was this pause, this long, uncomfortable pause that made my stomach drop. Actually, Alex, Sarah finally said, her voice taking on this tone I'd never heard before. I need to talk to you about that. About what? The wedding? Of course I'll be there. I wouldn't miss it for anything. No, Alex, you don't understand. I don't want you to come. I literally couldn't process what she'd just said. I'm sorry, what? Look, this wedding is really important to me and Michael. It's going to be filled with successful people. His colleagues, his family, important business contacts. I can't have... She trailed off. Can't have what, Sarah? I can't have people there who might embarrass us. The words hit me like a physical blow. Embarrass you? Sarah, I'm your brother. I know and I love you, but let's be realistic here. You're 32 and you live in that tiny apartment. You drive a beat-up Honda Civic. You wear the same 3 suits to every event. Michael's family has money, real money, and they're going to notice. I looked around my apartment. The secondhand furniture, the small TV, the stack of library books on my coffee table. Everything Sarah said was technically true. But hearing it laid out like that, like evidence in a case against me, felt devastating. Sarah, I'm still your brother. I've been there for every important moment in your life. And I appreciate that, I really do. But this is different. This is my wedding day, and I need everything to be perfect. I need to make a good impression. On who? On people who judge others by their bank accounts? Don't be dramatic, Alex. This is just how the world works. Michael's colleagues are going to be there, and some of them are really influential. His boss might even show up if we're lucky. I can't risk anything going wrong. I sat there in silence, trying to wrap my head around this conversation. This was my sister, the same girl I'd helped with homework, driven to school when she missed the bus, supported through every breakup and disappointment. So that's it? I'm just not invited to your wedding? I think it's for the best. Maybe we can have dinner afterward, just the family, somewhere quiet. After I hung up, I just sat there staring at that invitation. The gold lettering seemed to mock me now. I noticed something I'd missed before. At the bottom, in elegant script, it said black tie required. Even their dress code was designed to exclude people like me, but here's what Sarah didn't know about my real job. Here's what nobody in my family knew. For the past 8 years, I've been the CEO of Thompson Industries. You might have heard of us. We're ranked 247 on the Fortune 500 list. We manufacture specialized medical equipment and employ over 15,000 people worldwide. Last year alone, our revenue was $2.8 billion. And Michael? Michael works for me. He's a senior manager in our sales division, and he has absolutely no idea that his mysterious, never-seen CEO is his fiancé's poor brother. I chose to live this way intentionally. When I inherited the company from my mentor 8 years ago, I made a decision. I wanted to see how people really were when they thought money wasn't involved. I wanted to know who would value me for me, not for what I could give them. I bought this small apartment under an assumed name. I drive an old car by choice. I wear simple clothes and live modestly because I learned early on that money changes people, and not always for the better. It changes how they see you, how they treat you, and most importantly, it changes how they treat others. My family thinks I work as a low-level administrator at some small company. I pay my own bills, never ask for money, and never give any hints about my real financial situation. It's been the perfect test of character, and unfortunately, my family has been failing that test for years. But this was a new low, even for them. The next day, I got a call from my mother. Alex, honey, Sarah told me about the wedding situation. Oh, did she? I think you need to understand where she's coming from. This is her special day, and she wants everything to be perfect. And having her brother there would ruin it? That's not what she's saying. She's nervous about making a good impression. You know how important this is to her. More important than family? My mother sighed. Alex, you know I love you, but sometimes you need to accept reality. Sarah's marrying into a very successful family. Michael's father owns 3 car dealerships. His mother is on the board of directors for 2 charities. These are accomplished people. And I'm not? You're doing your best, sweetheart, but let's be honest about your situation. There it was again. My situation. As if being humble and choosing to live simply was some kind of character flaw. What exactly is my situation, Mom? You know what I mean. You're not exactly what anyone would call successful. And that's okay. Not everyone can be a high achiever, but Sarah has worked really hard to get where she is. Where she is? Sarah works as a marketing coordinator at a mid-sized firm. She makes decent money, but nothing extraordinary. Her biggest accomplishment was landing Michael, and even that seemed to be based more on his family's wealth than any real connection. I see. So my presence would somehow diminish her achievements? It's not about diminishing anything. It's about fit. You wouldn't be comfortable around those people anyway. They talk about investments and business deals and country club memberships. What would you contribute to those conversations? If only she knew. That evening, I got a text from my dad. Sarah's doing what she thinks is best. Maybe it's time you focused on improving your own life instead of worrying about weddings. And then came the group chat. Our extended family had a group message thread that included aunts, uncles, and cousins. I watched in real time as they discussed Sarah's wedding plans, shared excitement about the venue, talked about what they were going to wear to such a fancy event. My name wasn't mentioned once. Finally, my cousin Jennifer texted me privately. Hey, are you not going to Sarah's wedding? Everyone's talking about it in the family chat. I replied honestly, Sarah asked me not to come. What? Why? Apparently, I don't fit the image she wants to project. Jennifer sent back a long string of shocked emojis followed by, that's insane. You're her brother. But then, an hour later, she sent another message. I talked to my mom about it. She said maybe Sarah has a point. It is a really upscale event, and you know how important first impressions are. One by one, my family was choosing sides. And it wasn't my side. I spent that night looking through old photo albums. Pictures of me and Sarah as kids, building sandcastles, riding bikes, celebrating birthdays. In every single photo, I was there for her. When she broke her arm in middle school, I was the one who stayed with her at the hospital. When she was rejected from her first choice college, I was the one who helped her see that her backup school was actually better. When she had her heart broken by her college boyfriend, I was the one who drove 4 hours to bring her ice cream and terrible movies. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was how much money I appeared to have, and how that reflection might affect her precious image. The invitation was still sitting on my coffee table, mocking me with its gold lettering. I picked it up and really studied it this time. The ceremony was scheduled for Saturday at 3 p.m., followed by cocktails and dinner. The venue was listed as accommodating up to 300 guests. 300 people were apparently more important to my sister than her own brother. I opened my laptop and did something I rarely do. I looked up Michael's social media profiles. His Instagram was a carefully curated collection of expensive restaurants, luxury vacations, and photos with his arms around Sarah at various high-end events. Every caption mentioned money in some way. Living our best life. Only the finest for my queen. Success looks good on us. His LinkedIn profile was even more interesting. Senior sales manager at Thompson Industries, it read. Passionate about building client relationships and exceeding revenue targets. His profile picture showed him in a suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, standing in front of our company's logo. Our company. The company I own. The company where I sign his paychecks. I scrolled through his recent posts. 3 weeks ago, he'd written, excited to be working for one of the most innovative companies in the medical equipment industry. Leadership here is visionary, even if our CEO prefers to stay behind the scenes. One day, I hope to meet the man who built this empire. The man who built this empire was sitting in a small apartment, wearing a t-shirt and sweatpants, having just been uninvited to his own sister's wedding. Michael had no idea he was about to marry into the family of the person he called boss every single day. I kept scrolling through his social media, and what I found painted a very clear picture of who Michael really was. There were posts complaining about lazy coworkers and people who don't understand what real success looks like. There were photos from company events where he always managed to position himself next to the highest-ranking people in the room. There were humble brags about his sales numbers and complaints about how some people just don't have what it takes to succeed in corporate America. But what really caught my attention were the posts about his mysterious CEO. Working for a Fortune 500 company where the CEO is so successful, he doesn't even need to show his face, he'd written just last month. That's the kind of wealth I aspire to. Ghost-level rich. Ghost-level rich. If only he knew. I closed my laptop and walked to my bedroom closet. In the back, behind my collection of simple work clothes and casual wear, hung a single designer suit. It was tailored perfectly, cost more than most people's cars, and I'd only worn it twice, both times to board meetings where I absolutely had to look the part. Next to it hung my other secret, a garment bag containing several more expensive suits, Italian leather shoes, and accessories that went with my real identity. I kept them here as reminders of who I really was, even when the world saw me as someone completely different. I pulled out my phone and called my assistant, Jessica. She was one of only 3 people who knew where I actually lived and how I chose to live. Hi, Alex. She answered on the first ring. Everything okay? Hey, Jess. Quick question. Do we have any company events coming up that Michael Chen would be attending? Jessica was quiet for a moment. Michael Chen was a name that came up occasionally in our conversations, usually when discussing sales reports or team performance issues. Actually, yes, there's the quarterly sales meeting next Friday. Why? Just curious about something. Has he been performing well lately? His numbers are decent, but... Jessica hesitated. But what? Well, you know I don't like to gossip, but there have been some complaints. Mostly about how he treats the junior staff. Nothing serious enough for HR action, but enough that people have noticed. What kind of complaints? Taking credit for other people's work, talking down to newer employees, making comments about people's appearances and backgrounds, classic middle management power trip stuff. Interesting. And he still doesn't know who I am? Nobody below director level knows who you are, Alex. That's how you wanted it. That's how I wanted it, I agreed. After I hung up with Jessica, I sat back down and stared at that wedding invitation again. Sarah's words kept echoing in my head. I can't have people there who might embarrass us. But here's what she didn't understand. The person she was worried about embarrassing her was the same person who could change her fiancé's entire career with a single phone call. The person she thought was beneath her social circle was actually at the very top of it. And Michael? Michael was about to learn that the ghost-level rich CEO he'd been bragging about working for was sitting right across the dinner table from him every Sunday at family meals. Or at least he used to be before he got uninvited to family events. I picked up the invitation one more time and noticed something else I'd missed. At the very bottom, in small print, it said, Thompson Industries is proud to sponsor this celebration. My own company was sponsoring my sister's wedding, the wedding I wasn't allowed to attend because I wasn't successful enough. The irony was almost too perfect. I folded the invitation carefully and put it in my desk drawer right next to my real business cards, the ones that said Alexander Thompson, Chief Executive Officer, Thompson Industries. Sarah wanted successful people at her wedding? She was about to get more success than she ever bargained for. But she had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I made a decision that would change everything. If my family wanted to judge me based on success, then maybe it was time they learned what real success looked like. I drove to my office, not the small administrative building where my family thought I worked, but the gleaming 30-story Thompson Industries headquarters downtown. I parked in my reserved spot, the one with CEO painted in gold letters, and took the private elevator to the top floor. Jessica was already at her desk when I arrived. "Good morning, Alex. You're here early. I need you to pull Michael Chen's complete employment file. Everything, performance reviews, HR complaints, supervisor evaluations, the works." Jessica raised an eyebrow but didn't question me. Within an hour, she had compiled a comprehensive dossier that painted a very clear picture of who Michael really was as an employee. The performance reviews were mediocre at best. Michael consistently hit his basic sales targets, but never exceeded them. His supervisor notes mentioned lacks initiative and tends to coast on minimum requirements. But what really caught my attention were the HR complaints. 3 separate incidents in the past year where junior employees had reported Michael for condescending behavior. 2 complaints about him taking credit for collaborative projects, and 1 formal warning about inappropriate comments regarding a colleague's obvious financial struggles based on her car and clothing choices. Reading that last complaint felt like a punch to the gut. Michael had been judging and humiliating employees based on their perceived economic status, and in just a few days, he was going to marry my sister while having no idea that his own poor brother-in-law was the person who could end his career with a single signature. "Jessica," I said, closing the file, "I want you to compile a detailed report on Michael's team performance metrics. Include productivity rates, client satisfaction scores, and revenue generation for his entire department." "Are you considering him for promotion?" she asked. Something like that. While Jessica worked on the report, I did some investigating of my own. I accessed our company's internal email system and reviewed Michael's recent communications. What I found was even more disturbing than his HR file. Email after email showed a pattern of office politics and credit stealing. He routinely forwarded emails from his team members to upper management, removing their names and presenting their ideas as his own. He had a group chat with 3 other senior managers where they regularly mocked newer employees and made jokes about people who clearly didn't belong in corporate America. But the most revealing emails were the ones about me, his mysterious CEO. "I heard rumors that our CEO is some kind of hermit," he'd written to a colleague. "Probably inherited the company and doesn't actually know how to run it. Real leaders aren't afraid to show their faces." Another email: "I bet our CEO is some old money trust fund baby who's never worked a real day in his life. When I finally meet him, I'm going to show him what actual business talent looks like." And my personal favorite: "Sarah's brother is exactly the kind of person who gives me secondhand embarrassment. Imagine being 32 and having nothing to show for it. Thank God successful people like us don't have to associate with that level of failure." I printed out every single email, every performance review, every HR complaint. The evidence was damning, and it painted a picture of someone who had built his entire identity around looking down on others. That afternoon, I received a call that made everything even more interesting. "Alex, it's Sarah. I have some exciting news about the wedding." "Oh?" "Michael's boss agreed to attend. Can you believe it? The CEO of Thompson Industries is actually going to be at my wedding." I nearly choked on my coffee. "Really? How did that happen?" "Michael has been working so hard to impress him, and apparently it paid off. The CEO's assistant called this morning and said he'd be honored to attend. Michael is over the moon. He keeps saying this could be the break he's been waiting for." "That's fascinating. Tell me more about this CEO." "Well, nobody's ever actually met him. He's apparently very private, very mysterious. But he built Thompson Industries from nothing and he's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Michael says he's like a ghost. You know he's there, but no one ever sees him. And Michael thinks meeting him will help his career? Of course. This is his chance to make a real impression. He's been preparing talking points and researching industry trends. He even bought a new suit specifically for the occasion. I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. I'm sure it will be a very memorable meeting. Alex, I'm telling you this because, well, I hope you understand why I had to make the decision I made. When people like that are going to be at my wedding, I simply can't risk any complications. No complications. Got it. After I hung up, I sat back in my leather chair and looked out at the city skyline. Sarah was right about one thing. This was going to be a very memorable meeting indeed. That evening, I called Jessica back into my office. Change of plans. I want you to RSVP yes to the Chen Thompson wedding on behalf of the CEO. You're actually going to attend? Oh, I'm definitely going to attend. But Jessica, I want you to do something else for me. I want you to book a suite at the Ritz-Carlton for the night of the rehearsal dinner. The presidential suite. The presidential suite? Alex, that's $15,000 a night. I know exactly what it costs. Book it. The next few days passed slowly, but I used the time to prepare. I had my expensive suits dry cleaned and tailored to perfection. I purchased new Italian leather shoes and a watch that cost more than most people's cars. I scheduled appointments with my barber and had myself photographed for a new set of professional headshots. But most importantly, I prepared mentally for what was about to happen. The night before the rehearsal dinner, I checked into the presidential suite at the Ritz-Carlton. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was staying in the most expensive accommodation in the same hotel where my family was celebrating my sister's wedding. The wedding I wasn't invited to attend. Jessica had arranged for a rental car, a sleek black Mercedes S-Class that would complement my new image. She'd also prepared a briefcase with all of Michael's employment documents, just in case I needed them. The rehearsal dinner was scheduled for 7 p.m. in the hotel's private dining room. At 6:45, I was ready. I looked at myself in the full-length mirror. The man staring back at me bore little resemblance to the poor brother who'd been uninvited to this wedding. This version of me wore a $3,000 suit that fit like it had been painted on. My shoes were polished to a mirror shine, my hair was perfectly styled, and the watch on my wrist could have paid for Sarah's entire wedding. But the most important accessory I carried was a simple business card holder containing my real business cards, the ones that would change everything. I arrived at the rehearsal dinner fashionably late, just as cocktails were being served. The private dining room was exactly what I'd expected. Elegant, expensive, and filled with people trying very hard to impress each other. I spotted Sarah immediately. She was wearing a cocktail dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, laughing loudly at something one of Michael's colleagues had said. She looked radiant and happy, completely unaware that her world was about to be turned upside down. Michael was across the room, surrounded by a group of men in expensive suits. He was gesturing animatedly, clearly holding court and loving every minute of it. I could hear fragments of his conversation, something about corporate strategy and revenue optimization. Nobody noticed me at first. I was just another well-dressed guest at an upscale event. But then Sarah's eyes landed on me, and her face went through a series of expressions that would have been comical if they weren't so telling. First, confusion, then recognition, then absolute horror. She excused herself from her conversation and marched across the room, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "What the hell are you doing here?" she hissed, grabbing my arm and pulling me toward a corner of the room. "Nice to see you too, Sarah. You look beautiful." "Don't you dare. I specifically told you not to come. How did you even get in here? This is a private event." "I was invited." "Invited? By who? Nobody here knows you." Before I could answer, Michael appeared beside us. He looked me up and down, taking in my expensive suit and polished appearance with obvious confusion. "Sarah, who is this? I don't recognize him from the guest list." "This is my brother Alex, the one I told you about." Michael's expression shifted from confusion to something approaching disgust. "Wait, this is the poor brother? He doesn't look poor." "He's not supposed to be here," Sarah said through gritted teeth. I specifically uninvited him. Well, he certainly cleaned up nice, Michael said with a condescending smirk. Did you rent the suit, buddy? Because that's a good look for you, very convincing. I smiled politely. Actually, I own it, along with several others. Michael laughed. Right, sure you do. Sarah told me about your situation. Look, I get it. You want to be here for your sister's big day, but this really isn't the right crowd for you. These are successful people, business leaders, people with real accomplishments. People like your CEO? I asked casually. Michael's entire demeanor changed. You know about that. Yes, actually, my CEO is supposed to be here tonight. Alexander Thompson himself. This is the opportunity of a lifetime for me. I'm sure it will be very memorable. It will be. I've been preparing for weeks. I have talking points, business propositions, ideas that could revolutionize the company. This is my chance to show him what real leadership looks like. Sarah was tugging on my arm, trying to pull me away from the conversation. Alex, you need to leave, now, before you embarrass yourself and me. But Michael was warming up to his favorite subject, himself. You know what your problem is? He said, pointing at me with his drink. You don't understand how the real world works. Success isn't handed to you. You have to earn it. You have to prove yourself every single day. I've worked my ass off to get where I am. And where exactly are you, Michael? I'm a senior sales manager at one of the most prestigious companies in the country. I report directly to the executive team. I make decisions that affect millions of dollars in revenue. That's very impressive. It is impressive. It is, and you know what? My CEO recognizes talent when he sees it. That's why he's here tonight. He specifically requested to attend my wedding because he knows I'm executive material. I nodded thoughtfully. Tell me more about this CEO of yours. Michael was clearly enjoying having an audience, even if it was just his fiancé's poor brother. Alexander Thompson is a legend in the business world. He took over the company 8 years ago and transformed it into a Fortune 500 powerhouse. The man is worth hundreds of millions, maybe billions. He's so successful that he doesn't even need to show his face. He runs everything from behind the scenes like some kind of business wizard. Sounds like quite a guy. He is. And tonight, I'm finally going to meet him face to face. This is going to change my entire career trajectory. Sarah was looking increasingly uncomfortable. Michael, maybe we should... You know what I respect most about successful people like my CEO? Michael continued, clearly on a roll. They don't make excuses. They don't blame circumstances or family situations or lack of opportunities. They just get results. He looked directly at me. Take you, for example. I'm sure you have all kinds of excuses for why you're not successful. The economy, bad luck, limited opportunities. But the truth is, some people are just built for success, and others aren't. That's an interesting theory. It's not a theory, it's reality. Sarah deserves to be surrounded by successful people who can match her energy and ambition. That's why tonight is so important. Everyone here represents achievement and excellence. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my business card holder. You know, Michael, you're absolutely right about successful people not making excuses. Exactly. Finally, someone who gets it. I opened the card holder and pulled out one of my cards. They also don't hide who they really are when it matters. I handed him the card. Michael took it without really looking at it, still riding high on his own rhetoric. See, this is what I'm talking about. Even you understand the importance of... He stopped mid-sentence. His face went completely pale as he read the card in his hand. What does it say, honey? Sarah asked, trying to peek over his shoulder. Michael's hands were actually shaking. It says Alexander Thompson, Chief Executive Officer, Thompson Industries. The room around us seemed to go quiet, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Sarah grabbed the card from Michael's hand and stared at it. This has to be fake. This is some kind of joke. Wait, Michael said, his voice barely above a whisper. Wait. You're telling me that you're... Yes, Michael. I'm your CEO. I'm the business wizard you've been wanting to meet. I'm the ghost-level rich boss you've been hoping to impress. Michael's drink slipped from his hand and crashed to the floor, but he didn't even notice. "You're my CEO," he repeated, as if saying it out loud might make it make sense. "I am, and I have to say, Michael, you've certainly made an impression on me, just not the kind you were hoping for." Sarah was staring at the business card like it might spontaneously combust. "This can't be real. Alex, this can't be real." I pulled out my phone and called Jessica. She answered immediately. "Jessica, it's Alex. I'm at the rehearsal dinner, and I need you to confirm my identity for a couple of people." I put the phone on speaker. "Of course, Mr. Thompson. How can I help?" "Can you please confirm for the people I'm with that I am Alexander Thompson, CEO of Thompson Industries?" "Absolutely. You are Alexander Thompson, Chief Executive Officer and majority shareholder of Thompson Industries, a Fortune 500 company with annual revenues of $2.8 billion. You've held this position for 8 years. Is there anything else you need me to confirm?" Michael looked like he was about to pass out. "That's all, Jessica. Thank you." I hung up and looked at both of them. Sarah was still holding my business card, her mouth hanging open. Michael was standing frozen, apparently unable to process what had just happened. "So, Michael," I said conversationally, "you were saying something about success and earning your position." I I don't How is this possible?" "It's possible because I chose to live quietly and let people show me who they really are. And you, Michael, have shown me exactly who you are. But you live in that tiny apartment. You drive that old car. I choose to live simply. I choose to drive a reliable car. I choose to dress modestly most of the time because I wanted to see how people treated me when they thought I had nothing to offer them." Sarah finally found her voice. "Alex, I don't understand. If you're really the CEO of Thompson Industries, then why didn't you tell us?" "Because this is what I learned about my family. You banned me from your wedding because you thought I wasn't successful enough. You chose your image over your brother. You picked money over family. But if you had known, you would have treated me differently. But you shouldn't need to know someone's bank balance to treat them with basic respect and love." Michael was starting to recover from the shock, and I could see his brain working overtime, probably calculating how badly he'd just screwed up his career. "Mr. Thompson, Alex, I had no idea. If I'd known who you were, you would have kissed my ass instead of insulting me. But Michael, here's the thing. I know exactly who you are too." I opened my briefcase and pulled out his employment file. "I know about your mediocre performance reviews. I know about the HR complaints. I know about you taking credit for other people's work. I know about your email conversations mocking employees who don't drive expensive cars or wear designer clothes." Michael's face went from pale to completely white. "I especially enjoyed the email where you called my family secondhand embarrassment and said you were thankful that successful people like yourself didn't have to associate with that level of failure." I didn't mean." "Oh, but you did mean it. And tomorrow morning, you're going to learn what real consequences look like." Sarah was looking back and forth between us like she was watching a tennis match. "What consequences? Alex, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that Michael is going to be reassigned to our entry-level training program, effective immediately after the honeymoon." "You can't do that," Michael said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I can do whatever I want, Michael. I own the company, but don't worry, you'll still have a job. You'll just be starting over at the bottom, where you can learn what it actually means to work your way up." The implications were sinking in for both of them. Sarah's dream wedding to a successful executive was turning into a nightmare where she'd married someone who was about to be demoted to the corporate equivalent of the mailroom. "Please," Michael said, and I could hear the desperation in his voice. "I'll do anything. I'll apologize. I'll change. You'll learn humility," I said firmly. "And maybe, if you can prove that you've actually changed, you might earn your way back up. But that's going to take years, not weeks." Sarah was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "Alex, please don't do this. Don't ruin my wedding." "I'm not ruining anything, Sarah. I'm just showing you the real consequences of choosing money over family. You wanted successful people at your wedding? Well, congratulations. You've got me." I looked around the room, where other guests were starting to notice that something dramatic was happening in our corner. And now everyone here is going to know exactly who I am and exactly how you both treated me when you thought I was beneath you. Michael made one last desperate attempt. The whole company will know about this. My reputation will be destroyed. Your reputation was already destroyed, Michael. I just have the documentation to prove it. I closed my briefcase and straightened my tie. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a wedding to attend tomorrow. After all, I am family. As I walked away, I could hear Sarah sobbing and Michael trying to frantically explain something to the other guests who were starting to gather around them. The ghost-level rich CEO had finally shown his face, and the wedding was definitely going to be memorable, just not in the way they'd planned. Way they'd